And things happened very quickly, as they almost always do in abusive relationships, although I didn't know that at the time. The first thing he did is he gave me a key to his apartment. And God, I was so pleased. I thought, here I am in this city where all the women talk about how men won't make a commitment. And I've got the best guy on the planet who wants me to have a key to his apartment. And then pretty soon after that, he asked me to marry him. And a red flag was that he wanted to keep it a secret, but I thought that that was incredibly romantic, that this was something just between the two of us. The next thing that happened is that he asked me to leave New York. He confided in me that he had had a very troubled childhood. His mother he had never met his father, and his mother had married a man when he was 4 who physically abused him from the time they lived together. And it was heartbreaking physical abuse. Put him in the hospital on a regular basis, broke his arm, broke his jaw, beat his mother in front of him. And he was really clearly trying to wrestle with those demons, and he told me that it would help him a lot if we could leave New York, that New York was just too intense and too crazy. So he convinced me to move to a small town in Vermont, to leave the best job on the planet. And I didn't realize at the time that this was classic an abusive step, that in New York I had friends and family and people who lived in my apartment building who I could turn to. And then in Vermont, I worked from home, in a home where no one could hear our fights. And I had no idea what I was heading into. I was young, and people think that abused women are underconfident, but in my case, I was really overconfident. I thought I could help him. I thought I could handle anything. He hit me 5 days before our wedding, the first full-out beating. And you all in this room, you know a lot more about domestic violence than I did at 22. I didn't realize how gradually it starts. And there had been angry episodes before and threats. But this was the first time where he had really attacked me. He choked me. It was 7 a.m. He choked me because I was angry because I couldn't get my computer to work. And he pushed me up against the wall. And then he went to work. And I knew what I was supposed to do. I knew that if I were writing about this for 17 magazine, I would tell girls what to do. And, you were supposed to leave right away, of course. But I knew he loved me. And I knew I could help him. And I knew he was never, ever going to do it again. So we married. He hit me again on the honeymoon. He threw a Big Mac at me as I was driving home for our honeymoon. I have to say that he never did the same thing twice. And it made it much easier for me to believe that each case was a completely isolated incident and that he didn't mean it. I have to tell you that he never apologized. He never admitted that what he had done was wrong. And with one exception, we never talked about it. I think I knew that to talk about it would make it real, and that either he would get very angry or that I would have to leave. And each one felt like too big a risk to me at the time. My denial was a force it was no match. I was no match for it. I still looking back, cannot believe how powerful denial can be in a situation like that, where you're living with somebody who is threatening you on a regular basis. My husband had guns. He had the guns everywhere, and I was thinking in the video, he one of the first things he did was to threaten to kill our dog, a dog that he had gotten me for Christmas. And he threatened to kill me many times. I remember him holding my ponytail and pressing the gun against my head. And it was loaded, and he had loaded it with hollow point bullets, which he explained expanded upon impact. And my denial was so strong that I absolutely believed there was no way on earth he was going to pull the trigger. I didn't tell anybody, but there was one person brave enough to confront me. It was my husband's best friend. I still cannot believe the bravery of that man. He was almost never alone with me, so he only had a few minutes one night when my husband was in the bathroom to talk to me. And I remember him taking my hand, exactly the way a teacher takes a third grader's hand when you need to talk about something unpleasant and you don't want the child to pull away. And he said, "Leslie, I'm worried about you. Do you know that your voice trembles every time Connor comes into the room, and that when he leaves, it doesn't?" He said, "What can I do?" And God, did I know what he meant. I knew that he knew what was happening behind closed doors. And I wasn't able to speak. I wasn't able to confirm what he suspected. I wasn't able to ask him for help. But that confrontation changed me forever because it broke through my denial. And it made me realize that if my husband's best friend was so worried about me, that I must really be in trouble. Ed did something else really incredibly wonderful soon after that. My husband had always wanted to go to business school. He was obsessed with Harvard, and he wanted to go to Harvard Business School. And Ed and my husband convinced me to go to business school also at the same time. So my husband, contrary to everything that he had set up with me getting so isolated, made what was a wonderful error in judgment, and that he convinced me to go to business school. And we didn't go to Harvard, but we went to another big, famous business school in the middle of a city. So I was back with neighbors and friends and classmates. And slowly, my self-esteem started to grow again because I loved business school and I loved being with all those people. And I had a place to escape to. Home was a prison, but I didn't have to be there very much. And when I wasn't there, I was on campus with all these wonderful, crazy, ambitious, promising, hope-filled people who also believed in me, and my professors believed in me too. And I never would have thought that a place like a business school would have been my Underground Railroad, but it was. And I managed to have the one conversation with my husband about the violence. One afternoon at the end of a summer of our first year at business school, and I told him that I couldn't do it anymore, that I loved him so much, but that I couldn't live with somebody who was beating me up. And he could not meet my eyes. I remember him looking down at his feet in the sand and him saying, "Leslie, I love you. You're my family. I never wanted to do it. I will never do it again." And so we started anew. And I was sure that the first years of our marriage would be a time in our life that we would talk to our grandchildren about. We would say that, yes, marriage was hard at first, but that if you stuck it out, it would be worth it. And 6 months passed, and he did not hit me once. He got angry, sure, he couldn't help that. But he never hit me. And he never threatened me. And I began to be filled with hope again. And to celebrate this second chance, and also to celebrate his birthday, I planned a trip to a place he had never been to. He had grown up abused and very poor, and he had never finished high school. It made it that much more amazing that he'd gotten into an Ivy League school and then an Ivy League business school. He was the smartest man I've ever known. But he had never been out of the United States, and I thought that Paris would be a good place to go. And so I planned this cheap, hopefully romantic celebration. And we were to leave on his birthday. And the night before, the night before it's a really, really hard time for me to talk about. And I want to keep talking to you all. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to play a video. It's a very short video, but it's me reading from Crazy Love about this night that changed my life. And then afterwards, I'm going to talk to you a little bit about what it was like rebuilding my life and how I turned to, without knowing it, somebody who actually had never asked anybody for help before in my life, turned to people like you and asked you for help. So if we could play the video, that would be great.